5 years ago, I was paying $65 a month for my subscriptions. Today, those same subscriptions cost $111, and I don't even use half of them anymore. That's why now I use Rocket Money to manage my subscriptions for me. The app gives you a list of all your subscriptions and reminds you of upcoming payments so you're not hit with any surprise charges. On top of that, it also sends you alerts when subscription prices go up, so you always know the price you're paying. If you decide you no longer want a subscription, you can cancel it right from the app. No customer service needed. And the best part is, Rocket Money even reaches out and tries to get you refunded for some of the money you lost. On average, people that cancel their subscriptions with Rocket Money save $378 a year. And overall, Rocket Money has saved its members $880 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Go to rocketmoney.com/cancel to get started. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Let's do the 60-second savings challenge. Step 1, download Rocket Money. Step 2, link your accounts and see every subscription you're paying for. Tap one you don't use and cancel it. That's money back every month. Step 3, create a financial goal. $50 every paycheck, or let the app automatically move small amounts of cash when you can afford it. In a week, you'll forget you set it up. In a month, you'll see real dollars piling up. In a year, you'll be shocked at how much money you've saved. Bonus challenge, upload an internet or phone bill and let Rocket Money try to lower it. You only pay if they find you savings. On average, Rocket Money members can save up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Users love the app with over 186,000 five-star ratings. Make saving money the resolution you actually keep. Start the 60-second savings challenge at rocketmoney.com/cancel. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Want to feel more confident with your finances this year? If you have 60 seconds, I can show you how quick and easy it is to start building healthy money habits that could last you the entire year just by using Rocket Money. Step 1, download Rocket Money. Step 2, link all your accounts and see your entire spending picture, your subscriptions, your upcoming bills, your due dates, everything. Step 3, tap a subscription you don't use and cancel it. Boom! That's money back every single month. Step 4, create a financial goal for something you want to save for, whether it be a vacation, a retirement account, or a pet's birthday. We don't judge. Now let the app automatically move small amounts of cash towards your goal. In a month, you'll see real dollars piling up. In a year, you'll be shocked at how much money you saved. Similar to the over 10 million members on the app that have saved up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Use the Savings Challenge as one step closer to feeling better about your finances today at rocketmoney.com/cancel. That's rocketmoney.com/cancel. One more time, it's rocketmoney.com/cancel.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. No giggling at the start here because, Kieran, this is quite exciting. It's news day and literally, a friend of mine gets very cross when you use the word literally because he'll say, no, literally, the world is not on fire, is it? And you go, yeah, but I wasn't speaking. But you said literally, and then it all gets... And then you go, just go and get me a literal pint of Guinness and shut up. But literally, breaking news, Kieran. And oddly enough, we were going to mention one of the clubs involved. But Thomas Frank, we were recording this at 10:10, and at 10 o'clock the news came through that Thomas Frank had been sacked. I can't say I'm surprised. I watched their game with Newcastle last night, and they were good. But they've got 12 first-teamers out, Kieran. So I'm sure there will be some sensible Tottenham fans saying, what's he supposed to do? And many other Tottenham fans saying, well, he probably injured himself in training, I imagine. But it's a big one, Kieran, and I think it's going to cost Spurs a lot of money. And I do wonder whether Daniel Levy would have made the right decision, considering how much it probably will cost Spurs. What have you got any idea what sort of figure we'll be looking at compensation-wise here? He's only 6 months into his contract.
Well, that's right. He and his representative will have had a meeting with Spurs this morning. And they will have agreed a payoff, which is mutually beneficial in the sense that he'll probably sign an NDA, which means he won't go and slag off the club. Yep. And also from the point of view of any manager, they want to make themselves as employable as possible. So therefore, if they have a reputation for being a bit of a firebrand, that can count against them. He does have a duty to try to find employment. So we've seen with the likes of Graham Potter and Pochettino, when they've left clubs, people have said, well, they're just sitting because they've got long-term contracts and they don't have to find work. But talking to some of our sport employment lawyers, he does have a responsibility to try to find employment. And also, remember, this is what these guys want to do. Just as we all in our own chosen fields want to be there as a professional. So there will be compensation which will be linked to the amount of time it takes to find him a new job. But the chances are he'll probably get a minimum of a year's payoff. That's if he finds a job. And if it takes him longer, then potentially he could be on the payroll for a longer period of time. Now whether he's got a fixed payment or whether he's going to be paid on a monthly basis, that's clearly a private matter. But it's not going to be cheap, and we are now reaching that point in the season where it appears there's quite a few managers under increasing pressure, especially towards the bottom half of the Premier League.
Yeah, he should probably have taken the Ole Glasner approach and say, I'm going anyway. And then you avoid all this speculation. Still, Sky last night, after the Tottenham game, saying Tottenham were in danger of relegation, and then went straight to, and Palace still in a precarious situation, while every single Palace fan in the country going, you missed out Brighton. Completely. There's Brighton between Tottenham and Palace. I feel for Thomas Frank. He's apparently a very decent fellow. He looked haunted. The last few weeks he's looked haunted. When they signed him from Brentford, Kieran, this is a question I've meant to ask you before. We know players' contracts normally have lots of add-ons and bonuses if you play more than 20 games, if you win the FA Cup, if you score a goal. Would a manager's contract have similar bonuses if we finish in the top 6, if you get us in the Champions League, if you win us a trophy? Is that normal in a manager's contract?
Potentially, yes. Funnily enough, Brentford's accounts came out at 10 o'clock this morning, and I've had a quick look, and it turns out that Spurs paid Brentford £6.7 million in compensation, effectively to snatch him away from his contract. And clearly that's not worked out. Chelsea played Brighton £22 million for Graham Potter, and he was out within 8 months. So we are now reaching the era in which multi-million pound transfers of managers are commonplace. Ruben Amorim cost Manchester United somewhere in the region of £10 million. And they'll, of course, have to go and pay him compensation when they sack him as well. So manager costs are a very big issue, and doing your due diligence. And we'll talk about Brentford's results a bit later, but sometimes it's the club which is the success, and the manager is a cog, an important cog. I'm not denying that. But because, in my view, there is an over-focus on managers, in the sense that if the club wins, it's down to the manager. If the club loses, it's down to the manager. It's far more nuanced than that, and it's having that culture and having that strategy at a club, which is far more important, that can be the driver of success or otherwise.
It's interesting, as Alan Pardew pointed out last night. I was watching the Premier League's preview show, and this is an indication that every now and again I still get quite stiff and immobile. As I was sitting in a chair, this came on. I couldn't reach the remote control. I couldn't be asked to get up, so I thought I'll carry on watching it. And Alan Pardew actually made a point. It's never really occurred to me before. For 99% of the managers, take somebody like Alex Ferguson out of the equation, or possibly Jose Mourinho. For 99% of the managers, most of the time, they're not successful. Most of the time, they're keeping the club up, or they're keeping the club mid-table, or they might go on a cup run. But most of the time, they're just in and around. Every now and again, there'll be a manager who appears in English football, he said, and then disappears, and we never hear of them again. But most managers just truck along, and the sack, they're far more likely to get the sack than a bonus, which is an interesting point.
It is. I do a bit of work for the League Managers Association,
Indeed,
and there has been research undertaken. Now, we when things get into sort of the public domain, into the public consciousness, they then become fact without necessarily being fact. So there's all this talk about a new manager bounce. Well,
Yeah,
Ange Postecoglou, there wasn't a new manager bounce when he went to Forest.
yeah,
Sean Dyche is already under pressure.
yeah.
And then people say, well, and then you get into the world of whataboutery. Michael Carrick's made a really good start at Manchester United. I'm not denying that whatsoever. If you take a look at the impact that Liam Rossini has had, but those are, as you were saying earlier, and Alan Pardew was effectively inferring, those are the exception rather than the rule, because it's footballers that win matches and lose matches. And without wanting to sound too much like a TED talk, the vast majority of matches that I watch, and probably you watch, are there's one goal in it.
Yeah.
Whether that's a victory or a defeat or a draw, and that comes down to one mistake, one good save, one refereeing decision, or one piece of inspiration, and that you cannot coach that. There have been some coaches who have been visionaries, and Pep would be one, Johan Cruyff would be one. I think my personal view was that Sir Alex Ferguson was a visionary motivator rather than a tactician, and that brought a lot of success on the back of that. But the average tenure for a manager in the Championship, I think is 14 months.
Yeah.
How can you build a squad? How can you change a culture? You can't turn around a Titanic in that amount of time.
Well, you can't turn around a Titanic at all, it turns out.
Well, yeah, true.
Sean Dyche last night, and he was laughing about himself. And the same day that it was announced he was manager of the month, there was a headline in the local newspaper saying "Time to go?" ? The new manager bounce, and we have discussed this before, but we do have new listeners. It really annoys me, this concept of the new manager bounce, because many, many times a new manager comes in because a club has got 2 games coming up against opposition in and around them or below. So these are must-win games. We must have a new manager for these games. So they're games that you probably would have won anyway. Essentially, if you'd kept the same manager, you would have. The third thing is, Kieran, I'm not sure how aware you are of the Harry Potter books and whether you know that. Well,
I've got 2 kids who are now in their early 30s. So
yeah. Hermione Granger, as you all know, had a little I can't remember what it's called, but little thing that she was given by Dumbledore that turned back time an hour or so she could go to that. I'm beginning to think you must have one of those, because it's still only 10:20. Thomas Frank was only sacked at 10 o'clock. Brentford's results only came out at 10 o'clock. Yet you still managed to find time before we recorded to have a quick look at both of them. You're astonishing, Kieran. That's incredible.
I am privileged, I think is the word. I now sometimes get access to embargoed information, but I didn't know about Thomas Frank. But in terms of him being sacked, I can assure you.
Okay, one person's access to embargoed information is another person's hacking, Kieran. You know that, don't you? Right, let's get into some news stories that didn't just break this morning. I think I'm possibly the only person in the world who still doesn't like the playoffs, Kieran. You know that. I'm pretty much a Ginham. Mostly because I don't think the club who finishes 6th in any league table should have a right to try and get promoted. So imagine, Kieran, how happy I was when this shameful news was announced yesterday.
I think it's great. The news is that, and we have covered this story. This was a suggestion put forward by Peter Ridsdale of Preston. Now, I never say that clubs act in self-interest, of course, but his suggestion is for the EFL Championship, and I suspect this could easily also apply, of course, to League One and League Two, to extend the playoffs so that the side finishing 5th plays the side finishing 8th, the side finishing 6th places the side finishing 7th, and those would be one-off matches where the side finishing the highest has home advantage, So again, if you do finish 8th, you are up against it. And then the winners of those two would go to a 2-legged playoff, effectively a playoff semi-final, against the sides finishing 3rd and 4th, with the final match to take place at Wembley. The rationale for this is to reduce the number of dead rubbers towards the end of the season. There's nothing more tedious, and we've been quite privileged to be in the Premier League for so long, where because we are conscious that every match is worth, or every position in the table is worth just under £3 million. There aren't dead rubbers for that very reason, and I've certainly seen quite a few contracts where finishing above a certain position does trigger bonuses for players and staff and so on. So that exists in the Premier League. It doesn't exist in the EFL to the same extent. And I would not only have playoffs for extended to this, like for promotion, I'd have it for the final European place, and I'd also have it for relegation. Just 2 down, and then the 4 clubs above that go into effectively a loser takes all, and that would mean that practically every match of the season still has some jeopardy, still has some tension in it.
You sound like a Sky executive, Kieran. You know that. I mean, into each marriage, a little rain will fall. There's always a little small thing that begins the crack in the relationship. You and I have been supporting football for a long time. It's the nature of football. 90% of the games we've watched over the last 50 years had nothing on them. That's part of the game. It's as simple as that. You live with it. It's just you get to the end of the season. If your team hasn't been good enough to get above mid-table, tough. That's how there's always next season. Otherwise, you reach a situation where you go, okay, then if let's go down to the 10 top teams, let them in the playoffs, and all the teams below that can go in the relegation. But 6 is enough. The team who finishes 6th don't deserve to get promoted. They finish 6th, and even then, the team that finished 6th, the team that finishes 3rd should go straight into the final. It's fine. I realise it's like goal line technology. I'm not putting the genie back in the bottle. I get that. But just to keep adding, it's like VAR for corners next season. What's the point? It's just something. If you support a mid-table team, glory in the fact that you're not going down. Not every team can win it or go up. And I know the National League, their circumstances are slightly. I mean, this sounds like the National League scenario, doesn't it? Really, when
it is. I mean, the National League have the complication of only 2 clubs getting promoted overall. And therefore, by extending it, but it is common in some other sports, and it does add to end of season intrigue, which can have a positive impact upon attendances.
The fact that they might do it in the Croatian Handball League is neither here nor there. Basically, we should. It's like one of those schools where you get a prize for finishing 15th in the relay. It's like you did really well. You finished 15th in the relay. That's great. Celebrate that. And I put a little sticker on the fridge, but don't get a certificate for it. It's just
game's gone. Game's gone, Kevin.
You say, oh my God, Gary Neville and Mika Richards over the weekend they've literally, it's like somebody give them a nudge so they stop saying game's gone, because defenders shaking hands when they put a tackle in, goalkeeper getting high-fived for saving the ball. See, again, goalkeepers don't catch it enough. They'll get really cross. People go, that was a good save. No, it wasn't. He could have caught that.
That save from Donnarumma that was off the scale.
I mean, we mentioned this on Monday in the questions pod after the Brighton Palace game, which, finding the highlights from that was that Liverpool Man City game was cracking. But that save was brilliant. And Joe Hart did the most amazing analysis of it on Sunday night on Match of the Day 2, which was fantastic. He just basically followed Donnarumma's position for the 15 seconds beforehand and how many times he had to readjust it. It's incredible. I mean, it helps that he's 8'7".
Yes.
But what? I mean, what a game that was as well.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, I didn't watch Match of the Day 2 on
Sunday night. Well, oddly enough, it was the first time I had watched it for quite some time, basically. I was pleased to see Mark Chapman still going. So I worry about him not getting enough work. I do. You know, Mark Chapman and Romesh Ranganathan could have 4 weeks off, and 28 people would be employed in their stead. The Football Supporters Association, Kieran, have confirmed what many of us have heard through gossip and rumour about tickets for the World Cup in the summer.
Yes, FIFA have made a big hoo and indeed a big ha about the availability of tickets and the number of applications. But the FSA have done their homework and they've said there's gaps. And especially if you take a look at some of what and this is not being disparaging to the clubs, the countries that have qualified, because they've qualified for the FIFA World Cup final. And actually, part of me is thinking to have an expanded competition is great, because you look at Cape Verde getting through. That is absolutely brilliant, and that wouldn't have happened if it had been an old school 16 team tournament. So I'm sort of softening my particular stance there. But the average ticket price for the final is $3,945.
The average.
This is football.
Oh my.
So what has happened? And we've got Gianni Infantino justifying this by saying, "Oh, look at the amount of money that gets reinvested into football." Yeah. But that's absolute hogwash. So yes, it does look as I think Henry Winter's done an analysis. He reckons that there could be 1,000 if England get to the final. You can get these sort of tickets which you follow through. And he seems to reckon that there's 1,000 of those which are currently unsold simply because fans are being priced out. It's going to cost you a ridiculous amount of money if you are going to follow your country. And for all of those fans, whether you're a fan of Cape Verde or England or Germany or Brazil, you've put in the hard yards already, supporting your nation through and giving the players that boost from the noise that you make. And now for that effectively to be taken out of the hands of those fans and say, we're going to replace you with corporates, we're going to replace you all with tourists, we're going to replace you with commercial partners because it makes more money for FIFA, increasingly suggests that FIFA doesn't actually understand what football is about, but does understand what money's about.
I've painted myself into a corner here, Kieran, because technically I think it's wonderful that countries like Cape Verde are at the World Cup. But just 2 minutes ago, I was saying that teams like Mansfield shouldn't be in the playoffs if they finish 12th. So to be consistent, I have to say, no, if you can't top your group in the World Cup, tough. You ain't going. I mean, it doesn't help when the US government announces that people applying for temporary visas for the World Cup will have to declare their social media output for the last 5 years. And if they are unable to show it, they're not getting a visa. Anecdotally, I know a lot of people who have been to every World Cup, who've been to every England game, home and away for many years, who are just simply not going to this one for a number of reasons, geopolitics, mainly financial, I have to say. And yet, as we know, that all the stadium will be full. They'll all be full to capacity. It will be declared the best World Cup ever, but it could be cancelled halfway through and Trump will declare it the best World Cup ever. Infantino, who's increasingly losing touch with reality, will declare it the best World Cup ever. But I've never known... I feel for Canada and Mexico, because they're the countries where the World Cup should be, to be perfectly honest. Mexico's had it before, but they're a massive football nation. Canada, as we know, is not such a massive football, but it's never had a World Cup before, and they're huge sporting fans, so they will properly get behind every team that's in the World Cup. It just annoys me it's back in the States, and it's the USA part of it that is causing the problem. Essentially, that's what's putting most people off. If this World Cup was in Canada and Mexico, obviously travel would be difficult, but if it was just Canada and Mexico, I'd be looking forward to it as much as any World Cup. I have very little feeling about it whatsoever, which is upsetting me.
Yes. I'm meeting somebody from the United States this weekend, and we're going to try to get them onto the podcast. So I think we're opportunity for a chat, and we'll take that forwards.
But we know as well. I don't want to be unfair to our American listeners.
Well, American fans are brilliant. But
Absolutely.
I've been to World Cups, and there's been American fans, and their knowledge of European football is sensational.
Absolutely, and not just American fans. We know there's a huge audience of Hispanic, Irish, Italian expats and descendants who love their football. So I'm not suggesting the World Cup shouldn't be in America. I'm suggesting that Infantino and Trump is a poisonous double. I'm not sure what's the word for a double chalice, but it's a poisonous double chalice. And speaking of poison chalices, Barcelona in the European Super League, Kieran, it seems to be a bit of an about turn here for some reason.
I think we're down to a single chalice now. Because if we go back to the initial European Super League project, there were 12 teams involved from only 3 countries. So I'm not quite sure how they claimed it to be European at the time. The protests from English fans initially resulted in the spineless collapse by those club owners who clearly don't understand anything about football, but it meant that the English clubs immediately withdrew. We saw the Italian clubs withdraw with the exception of Juventus. Juventus pulled out about a year ago, and now Barcelona have withdrawn their support, leaving only Real Madrid. Now, that's the what, what's the why? Yeah, that's my sort of mantra. In Barcelona, we currently have a presidential election campaign taking place, and therefore, why has Barcelona pulled out? It's because the prospective presidents have realised that the optics on this, being in partnership with Real Madrid, who are the most loathed team in Barcelona, isn't a good thing, and therefore to be seen to be their only partner is makes no sense if you're after votes. So this, I think this is sort of indirectly connected with the presidential campaign. Where this leaves A22, who are the torchbearers for the competition, I'm on LinkedIn with the guy in charge of A22, and I regularly send him messages saying, "Come on and tell us about how great it is." We will treat everybody, and we've never dropped bear traps into our interviews. I always say, my view on guests is that if you're a guest in my house, you're in my house, and I treat you with. And if I don't like your tie, well, I'll keep quiet about it.
Who's coming to your house wearing it? Are you making people dress up to come to your house now?
Are we talking about those parties? That's for another podcast.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
We did our Q&A Zoom on Monday night, Kieran.
Blimey, we had a lot of questions.
We did for club members. So if you want to join the Q&A Zoom, become a club member, and you can ask questions very current and topically, and get slightly off-piece replies from Kieran, who takes his filter out just for the occasion. But this subject came up, and our good friend Nobby, Palace fan, was one of the people who mentioned the politics of Spanish football, that this is the reason why Barcelona are doing it, and you can fully understand why. But talking to people yesterday, Kieran, off the back of that discussion, and basically saying, well, the European Super League is dead, but only under that name. it will come back, but it'll be a different trademark. It'll be registered in a different. It'll be registered in the British Virgin Islands somewhere. It'll be called the European Super Project, and eventually, this is how cynical football fans are at the moment. I don't know many football fans who don't think it won't happen. It's just been probably put back 6 years now.
Well, yes and no. There's a case for saying that we've got a Super League in the sense that the Premier League is so dominant.
Yeah.
I cannot see going forwards any reason why the Premier League would have anything less than 5 clubs in the Champions League. The relationship between the big clubs and UEFA is such that UEFA have given away more and more concessions. And I mean, to be fair to UEFA, they have generated a hell of a lot more money. They've got new marketing partners. So qualification for the the Champions League is worth €18 million before a match is kicked, and then you get €2 million for every victory. You get other pots of money based on how much. So realistically, you're always going to get 40 million quid as just for turning up without winning any matches. And if you go on to win it, it's worth somewhere in the region of 150 to 200 million pounds. And if you win it, you of course qualify for the FIFA Club World Cup. So why rock that particular boat? Because these clubs now have got such an advantage over the middle class clubs in the Premier League, and the aim of the Big Six when they joined the Super League was they feared a club such as Leicester stealing, in the words of one executive. What right have they got to be in the Champions League? Now, did Super League take that project to another level? Absolutely, because if Leicester City had won the Premier League in 2026 and we were operating in a Super League environment, Leicester City would have qualified for the 3rd division of the Super League, and it wouldn't have been the kudos, and they wouldn't have been playing Real Madrid, and all of the rewards which, in my view, they thoroughly deserved. So I don't think we will have an extreme version of the Super League as was initially proposed. And remember, they've watered down those proposals on the back of criticism. But you look, and it's a bit like Animal Farm. You look from human to animal and animal to human, and you go, actually, I can't tell that much difference anymore.
Yeah, interesting as well in our next news story that Arne Slot admitting the other night that missing out on the Champions League would be very bad news, but not from a football point of view, from a financial point of view.
Yes, I mean, if we now focus on the Champions League, if for every and Swiss Ramble, by the way, who is sets that high watermark in financial reporting on the game. We are booking him in for our 1000th show. I know it's still 4 years away, but Swiss, we know you listen. Yeah, we just make sure we get to the 900s.
We have to book him in advance. He's like Nick DeMarco and conductors of high-level orchestras. You've got to go 4 years in advance for the Swiss Ramble.
He's done a really brilliant piece of analysis on how much the clubs have made to date. And Liverpool, I think they've made something like €97 million, and we're only in the group stages. Yeah. And you contrast that with the clubs which are in the the Europa League. You're getting for every £1 that you get in the Champions League, you get around about 22 pence in the Europa League and 11 pence if you're in the conference. So it is very much a case of Champions League or bust if you want to be able to have those blockbuster transfer budgets over the course of the summer. So it does have a negative impact. At the same time, Manchester United aren't in Europe this season. They spent £200 million on 3 strikers over the course of the summer. So I think he's trying to send out a message in advance, and sometimes this is the way that people are trying to prep fans, because the culture of football fandom is that spending money is the way to alleviate all problems. But I think there are indications that having a good culture and having a recruiting smart rather than recruiting big can be just as successful.
I had an email yesterday from a potential employer asking if I could check my diary to see if I was free on the 20th of February next year. And I emailed back to say, I don't need to check my diary. I've only just got a diary for this year, to be perfectly honest. I certainly haven't got a diary for next year. I will take a punt and say, yes, I am available on the 20th of February next year. This next story, Kieran, about private equity firms being slightly shady, I'm not entirely sure why this is a news story, because I believe this is like having a story about the squirrels are hiding nuts, apparently. It's just it's what they do. I know but I'm happy to listen to you, Kieran, because it looks quite complicated.
Yes, this is from the investigative journalist Paul Brown, who he does a lot of diving into the murky waters of the world of finance, and this is on the back of our not very good friends, 777 Partners, who were at one stage the potential new owners of Everton Football Club, and how they had operated in effectively a Bermuda Triangle of obfuscation, of paying out of the left hand from the right hand and then moving back to the left hand, and so on. And the relationship that 777 had with private equity. And if you take a look at some of the reports which are coming out, private equity is increasingly looking at football. It's invested money in rugby union, and rugby union is not the better for it, I can assure you. Private equity is not a friend of football. Private equity is there to look after the interests of the people who put money into the private equity funds, who have got no emotional connection to the game, no knowledge of the game. It is simply deemed to be part of the broader entertainment industry. And I'm not a Super Bowl fan particularly, but as a piece of financial engineering, it's absolutely incredible. In a 3-hour show that took place on Sunday night, I think there was 11 minutes of sport in 3 hours.
Yeah.
There were 60 advertising breaks and an average of 3 adverts per break, so 180 ads.
Wow.
Crammed into that period of time. And people say to me, why is it that the NFL TV deal is worth so much more than the Premier League? Well, it's because it's an advertiser's program, and it's all designed around marketing products and so on. And my big fear is that if the likes of private equity get their hands on football, and what they might do is that they won't necessarily buy individual clubs. What they might do is they might buy a share in a league. So let's say that they say, well, we're going to buy 20% or 30% of the Premier League for £2 billion. That works out as £100 million goes to each club in the Premier League for sacrificing their existing shareholding, and then they're given the opportunity to shape the game. And they could be doing this in conjunction with the likes of FIFA and so on. We won't have 2 halves of 45 minutes. We will have 4 quarters. And then there will be coaching breaks allowed, because everything will be geared towards making money through additional advertising, marketing, broadcasting, and so on, in order to maximize the return. I don't know whether you saw the Ireland versus France. Was it Ireland versus France? Yeah, it was Ireland versus France. Rugby.
Yeah.
Well, what have we now got? We've now got in-match advertising.
Yeah.
And that is coming to football.
Yeah.
It will be introduced. It's a case of when rather than if. And you might say, well, it's just progress. Don't be a Luddite and so on. But we will see an ongoing chipping away of the one thing which links Hackney Marshes to Wembley is the fact that it's 2 teams of 11, referee, and 45 minutes per side. Well, that is going to, at some point in time, that is going to disappear.
Yeah.
And okay, I'm here. I'm being the traditionalist, as opposed to you, and I absolutely understand your position on playoffs. It's destroying the magic of football.
I can't watch Channel 5 anymore, which is a shame, because if you have any interest in D-Day and sharks, Channel 5 is the place to go. But it's just, it just drives. It's like watching TV in America. It's just 3 minutes in, there's another ad break, and oh my God. And they're exactly the same ads as well. This story, obviously I haven't read the details of this story, but it seemed to specify that in particular it was insurance money that was being channeled through various. I always think it's like Mousetrap. It always seems like you start something off and it ends with a poor little plastic mouse being caught in a cage. That's how these as Guy calls them, these complex offshore arrangements seem to work. But I do understand it's particularly insurance, and I was intrigued as to why it's particularly.
It's the insurance companies. They've got spare money.
I see.
Some of that will go within.
Right.
They will lend to private equity. And if we take a look at the case of 777, I think insurance companies lent 777 over $2 billion.
Wow.
We are talking huge sums of money.
So when Ipswich were taken over by a US healthcare scheme, or heavily invested into by a US healthcare scheme, which didn't seem too bad, I think, is that the same as a private equity investment?
No, not quite. I mean, if it's an insurance company, and I think it was an Arizona healthcare fund, what they do is that they simply say, well, we're going to buy into this as an investment, and then we're going to look to sell it at a profit at some point in the future.
Right, okay.
The nature of private equity is that they like to get involved. What they tend to do is that they hollow out costs. So they will be going through with a fine tooth comb, trying to reduce. They're trying to sack people. They're trying to there'll be a human cost, but that's how they see people, and they see people as costs rather than assets. So that there's implications for jobs. They will drive down all of the contracts as much as they can, and they are looking for an exit route in a few years' time at a profit. But they tend to be more aggressively involved, or if they're not doing it directly, they will give instructions to the senior management team. These are your targets. If you don't achieve these targets, you will be replaced.
Now, a lot of people in the last year or so, Kieran, have predicted that Sheffield Wednesday may well be the first big test case for the independent regulator. And it looks like their paths may actually be converging.
Well, yes, possibly. I think the regulator's powers will become extended by around about May. In terms of the regulator potentially at that point in time, it will have enough staff. They will have been training. They will have done their research. That they will effectively take over as far as the EFL is concerned. The equivalent of the owners and directors test. I think they're calling it owners, directors, and senior executives. So that is now we are now in mid-February.
Yeah.
So it's not that far away. There is a report in one of the newspapers today that things are dragging on with the Sheffield Wednesday takeover. Yeah. And if you take a look at the three people involved, they're all based overseas. One of them, James Board, his history is in being a professional gambler. I'm not going to call that out. Brighton are owned by a professional gambler.
Yeah.
Stoke City are owned by a bank gambling organisation. Brentford are owned by Matthew Benham, who again, very successful in terms of those areas. But this guy just appears to be sort of a professional poker player. He's got some sort of AI-based company. You look at the two other people who are being named in the press. Nothing's been confirmed by Begbie's, the the administrators as to the names of the people, and that's absolutely they would have signed a contract to give them discretion. But when James Board, I think he effectively named himself, and there was no denial that effectively gives your answer. But these people appear to have complex backgrounds based overseas, so therefore it's making the EFL's task that much more difficult in terms of A, do you have the money? B, can you provide us with source of funds? Are we entering Chris Kirchner territory? And for people not familiar with Chris Kirchner was the preferred bidder at Derby County of the administrators. And there were a few people who were doing an awful lot of decent investigative journalism behind the scenes. Again, friend of the show, Matt Slater, he was one of those. And I did conversations with Matt, and nothing goes out in the public domain. And Matt was very sceptical, and I was twitchy, to put it mildly, that Chris Kirchner wasn't necessarily what he claimed to be. In terms of his company, and he's now doing 25 years in the slammer for dodgy activities. So we are not at that stage, but the EFL is, and the EFL has only received documentation, I think, in sort of mid to late January. So it's having to go through very, very carefully. Could this still be dragging on by the time we get to May, when the regulator's powers are enhanced? It's a possible. The regulator has put out a statement to say we're cooperating as much as we can with the EFL, but we're not in charge of this particular decision. So it's not brilliant, but it's not disastrous.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
I look forward to those opponents of the regulator at football clubs and in the media. We know who they are. There's no point exacerbating our feuds further by naming them again. But I look forward to them spinning this as bad news, that the regulator trying to get the Sheffield Wednesday deal over the line. That's shocking. What are they doing, getting involved in a straightforward commercial deal like that? And Brentford's accounts you mentioned are out, Kieran. We talked about the little bonus they got from sending their manager to Tottenham for a couple of months. Anything else of interest in it? I have to say, and I know this is not a football pod, I probably owe Keith Andrews and everyone else at Brentford an apology, because I stated very clearly that I thought they were going to be in trouble this season, and I was wrong. It's remarkable what Brentford managed to do with players that you've generally not heard of, and they can go up to Newcastle and play them off. Well, not play them, but play really, really good football. So hats off to them. But are there accounts of any interest?
Well, they are to me. But I put out Cambridge United's accounts yesterday, and I was getting messages from Max Rushton, of course, on the back of that.
Well, you worried? There's a couple of Cambridge fans at our Zoom Q&A on Monday night who were very worried about your hints at their figures. Yeah.
I've first of all, I'm a huge fan of the Brentford model. I think as a club that sets that culture, which has allowed the likes of Thomas Frank to flourish and Keith Andrew, it shows. And I know this is a glib phrase. Trust the process. This when the process is as finely honed as it is at Brentford. Yeah, you do trust it. They've got record revenues for the first time in the club's history. They've spent £100 million in a single season on player recruitment, and when you've been in the Premier League for a few years, you do. Oh, we spent £100 million. You just shrug, don't you? You just go, okay, that's fine. But they lost £20 million. It would have been higher had it not been for the £6.7 million compensation from Spurs for Thomas Frank. The wage bill is continuing to go faster, to grow faster than revenue, because once you become established at that position in the Premier League, you've now got a squad that have been together for 4 years or have been recruited for 4 years. So they're all on Premier League wages. When Brentford initially came to the Premier League, they had a squad of 25, 18 or 19 of whom had previously been in the Championship, who all got decent pay rises for getting to the Premier League, but they were still on low wages by Premier League standards. Although those players have now moved on, they've been replaced by players who have come in who are on Premier League wages. So the wage bill's up, but it's still the lowest wage bill of any of the clubs who were not relegated. And yet last season they finished 10th. So I think that is indicative of how well run they are. They've taken a bit of a sort of external investment as well, but that's because Matthew Benham, I think he wants to dilute his role within the club. He's still controlling interest and so on. I just think that they're good. They lost 20 million quid. And this is for the club, which I'm saying, for me, this is one of the best run clubs in English football. I think they'll make a profit in 25-26 because they sold Visa, they sold Mbueno, and one or two others as well. But it does show that unless you've got a really smart model, it's impossible to be profitable on a day-to-day. And on a day-to-day basis, they're losing £1 million a week. They're relying on player sales and other bits and pieces to get that down to an acceptable £20 million. But over the 4 years they've been in the Premier League, they're still in profit.
Yeah. We obviously concentrate, Kieran, on football finance stories here, and occasionally forget that football players can be collateral damage in those stories. And football players, human beings, can be affected by this. And Harvey Elliott is one of those who's out in the wilderness. But Aston Villa manager Unai Emery is trying to resolve this situation now.
Yeah, and rightly or wrong, this is a football finance story because Harvey Elliott went out on loan from Liverpool to Aston Villa, and a lot of fans of many clubs said, "Oh, they've got a really good player," and they have. But sometimes your face doesn't fit. Things don't work out, and it comes down to the fact that it's a relationship. And we've all had some relationships which have worked out far better than others, and that is that's the way of the world. So he didn't seem to fit into Unai Emery's plans. The terms of the loan deal from Liverpool Football Club to Aston Villa Football Club were such that if I think he played 10 matches, the loan became an obligation to buy for a fee of around about 35 to 40 million. Now, an obligation to buy means there is what we refer to as an obligating event, and that obligating event was triggered when he played 10 fixtures. Emery said, thanks, but no thanks, it's not going to work out. But by all accounts, there was another clause in the contract along the lines of if Villa tried to send the player back to Liverpool because the relationship hadn't worked, then Villa had to pay compensation. And Villa have worked out that it's cheaper for them. And this is where the football finance element is overruling the human aspect of this. It was cheaper for them to keep Harvey Elliott in a glorified bomb squad because he's not going to get access to first team appearances because Villa don't want to go and pay the transfer fee. So he's wasting a year of his career. And it's a World Cup year. It is a short career. And this is a human cost.
Yeah. A very dear friend of my best friend's mum died last week at the age of 96. And very important part of I spent as much time in her house as a child and a young man as my own. And I went to see her husband last week, John, the man who took me to my first ever Palace game. He's probably responsible for about 50 Palace fans, John, I would say. And he's 96, still bright as a button. And he told me the local firm of undertakers who were doing the job. And I said, I had a long time ago, I had a brief relationship with the granddaughter of that undertaking firm. To which his eyes lit up and he went, I may ask for a discount in that case. And I said, given the nature of how the relationship ended, John, I think it's probably best not, because you'll end up basically ended because she found out I was with somebody else at the time, but it's my fault. But still, very happy memories. I love Ian Holloway, and I know some people don't share my view, but whether you love Ian Holloway or hate him, he's fantastic value, and his rant last week following this story is just. I urge you to look it up. It's on local Wiltshire BBC. I think it's one of the best football rants ever. And I can understand why, but they've been thrown out of the Virtue Trophy for I think an administrative oversight is the way you can put it. In the same way that we were thrown out of the Europa for an administrative oversight, but his reaction is much better than Steve Parrish's. much better.
Yes, I've got huge time for Ian Holloway because he's a brilliant dad.
Yeah,
for people that don't know, I think his two daughters are deaf, and he is absolutely brilliant. The number of miles that he puts in to maintain his relationship with his daughters, to help their development, their education, as well as being a football manager. My hat is always doffed towards Ian. And also, he's a thoroughly nice guy. Anybody that's been in his company will testify. Swindon have been eliminated. They've been thrown out of the Virtue Trophy by the EFL for incorrect registration of players. It's the Virtue Trophy, EFL. Let's be a little bit more generous. You're trying to persuade people to have interest in the trophy, Ian's explosion was. I wouldn't say it was comedy gold, but it certainly is broadcasting gold because he's a passionate man and he expresses himself in only the way that Ian Holloway can.
Well, it's also the timing of it as well, because it was only announced the night before the game as well, which is you need to listen to it. He is a very nice man. I wouldn't get on. He called me a piss-taking chancer once, but that was in context. But and basically, he's only little, but he's got that light in his eyes. It's one of those blokes. If you walked into a pub, you wouldn't use his pool cue without permission. It's like basically. In the 6 years we've been doing this, Kieran, Hull City have been a club that I've been in and out. Never really good news, but it looks like for our final story that things are improving on and off the pitch for Hull City.
Yes, they are doing very well indeed, and their Turkish owner, who I think he's had an up and down relationship with the fan base. He's shown an element of his commitment, but by writing off £24 million worth of loans and converting them into shares. So whilst this doesn't generate any cash for the club, it does tidy up the balance sheet. The cynic in me, and there's a little element of a cynic in me, says, is this perhaps sort of a bit of window dressing in the sense of trying to make the club look as good as possible from the perspective of him selling out to somebody else, and that could be the case, but it broke in the whole daily press and so on, and I had a chat with Radio Humberside, and it's just sort of it's another slightly good feel for what is pretty feel good season for Hull. So it is nice to end on a positive note.
I'm not a big fan of the FA Cup at the moment, Kieran, as you can imagine.
You still holders, Kevin?
I've still, I mean, actually, I've still got several inflatable FA Cups. Right? I don't know what I'm talking about. But the hats off to the FA Computer for throwing up Hull v Chelsea this weekend. That's a cracking one. Don't forget, you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening access to our full back catalogue, bonus episodes, Zoom quiz invites even, and more. Just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy one of our books or a T-shirt, then you can go to that same website, priceoffootball.com. Palace have got the weekend off, Kieran. I can't believe how relaxed I'm going to be this weekend because it's the FA Cup. So I'll spend the whole time searching YouTube for videos I may have missed from last year's FA Cup final. I watched one the other night that I'd missed. It's a young German lad who filmed the whole thing. Ali just went, it says here this is an hour and 25 minutes long. We're only 5 minutes in. I said, well, go on. We'll watch a Death in Paradise repeat later on. In the meantime, I seem to be holding the remote control in this situation. We'll be back. I suppose I should wish you luck for the FA Cup, Kieran, but I've already got my post-Brighton being knocked out of the FA Cup tweet ready. So I'm rather hoping that is the outcome. But we'll be back on Tuesday with our next Questions Pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell. It's a stupid late kickoff again for you, for Brighton. No, not for you, because you'll be up there, but what time is it Saturday night, your game?
8 p.m. Yes.
How on earth?
It's bonkers. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. So tonight, Brighton are playing at Aston Villa. Indeed. So I'm going down I'm in Liverpool at present because I'm at uni, and so I've got a train down to Birmingham. There are no trains back, so there is a bus which leaves Birmingham coach station at midnight.
Wow!
I'm on the bus or the coach. I'm fascinated as to what my fellow passengers will be like. And that will get me back to Liverpool, I think, around about 2:30. Then I've got to walk home because I don't think there'll be any public transport at that time. And rightly so. Bus drivers and metro drivers, they deserve a decent break. And I'm in class at 9:00 on Thursday morning. So this is what we do as football fans. Yeah, this is but yes, and the Baroness has come up to stay with me for a few days as well, and I've got a little surprise for her. It's Valentine's weekend, so Saturday night. She doesn't know it. I've managed to get, because she's not in the away scheme, but I've managed to get an away ticket at Anfield for an 8 p.m. kickoff. Husband of the year, shoe-in on Mum's Net, or what?
You old romantic. I hope she's suitably grateful for that gesture, which is...
Well, I've kept it a secret.
No, I don't blame you.
There'll be tears. If she cries, there'll be tears of joy, or at least that's how I'll interpret it.
Because, I would keep it a secret to about half-time. Essentially, there's no point telling her now because she'll be on the first coach out. Imagine being the coach driver. You get your weekly rota and you go, but where am I going? Kidderminster, 2:00 in the afternoon? No, I'm going to Liverpool at 12:30 in the morning with loads of pissed blokes and a strange bloke at about trying to do a spreadsheet,
Yes.
holding his phone up. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.